Welcome to Spirit Q&A, where we question spiritual authority and answer spiritual questions to give you the life quality assurance you need for the happy ever after that you deserve. Today we ask, what do heaven and hell really look like? Where do they come from? And how do they compare to religious and cultural stereotypes? I am so excited to share my very personal experience in this area, so let's find out. Hi, my name is Carl Johann Schroeder. I am a spiritual teacher and a life coach, and I have been developing over my entire lifetime what I call inner selves mastery. That is my spiritual psychology system for personal evolution. These are exciting times for me. These are the ascension times in which people are waking up at many levels and very deeply on the planet. This is what I've been prepared for my entire life. And today I want to share with you my personal visions of heaven and hell, what they are, how they happen. Now gets really interesting because there are a lot of cultural stereotypes and images for heaven and hell, basically meaning heaven is some kind of wonderful paradise place that we can all dream of, and hell is some kind of horrible place of torture, which frankly the world is often already. So let's talk about what I personally experienced. But first, let's talk about the ascension. What is the ascension that's going on the planet right now? Because as I said, I've been prepared my whole life for it with many mystical and spiritual experiences that I've been guided by my soul team, my spirit team, to understand at a very deep level. And believe me, every person alive today has their own valuable place in the universe, the living, loving universe that truly cares about us. Every one of you listening, and myself, and those not listening, those not on the spiritual path and those not on the spiritual path, those personally growing and those not personally growing. Everyone has a place in the source, the God, the goddess, all that is, the creator, many names for it. One of my names is Big Hug because I have felt so incredibly hugged by the universe. Now, you are actually the entire universe experiencing itself through your perspective, your particular point of view. And you need to understand you are the universe. So it's not like we are somehow pawns in a cosmic game, which sometimes people can feel. You can imagine and feel all kinds of things, but they're not necessarily true. There are two levels, two kinds of experience in life. One is the level of believing something, which leads to experience. Now, I know that it can often seem that experience precedes belief. I believe something because I experienced it. But actually what happens is that you reinforce your beliefs because you experience. But originally, it comes from pure belief. Now, that is a very buried kind of phenomenon in the unconscious mind, which we need to make conscious. There are levels of the mind, and a lot of people like to think that the unconscious and subconscious minds somehow control us. But that's really just another belief. Actually, you run your life entirely from your conscious mind. The subconscious, the unconscious, these are all friends of yours. These are servants. The entire reality, physical reality, is a kind of virtual experience, virtual reality experience, which you share with like-minded people. That is the point of what they talk about with resonance matching or law of attraction, that there is a real universe out there. I'm really here, you're really there, but we will not meet each other unless we have something in common in our belief system, something in common in our energetic systems. And many times energy can be kind of synonymous with your beliefs as a human being because beliefs do drive your energy. They filter the divine energy which comes into everyone. We are always connected to the divine source, the original origins of the universe, which are all about love, all about brilliant creativity and wisdom. So why do we experience so much suffering here on the earth? Well, it's because of these belief systems, and this is what the ascension is about. You see, as a creation, of your beliefs. Beliefs, think of them as sort of this middle layer. And then at a higher level, you are a spiritual being. As I said, you are a form of the entire universe, experiencing itself through your personal story, your personal narrative, your personal perspective. So think of this in the very best possible way. The universe is your friend. It is you at a higher level of awareness, a greater level of awareness. So whatever your needs are, whatever your desires and dreams are, you are backed up by the worth of the entire universe. And you exist because you are important to the universe. So the ascension is about becoming both the creation inside of belief systems and the creator of a spiritual being above the belief systems. So there's a sort of microcosm here which can contain both sides of this belief system sort of fence or barrier. The reason why we split ourselves in two this way, in two parts, is because there's always more to experience. There's consciousness is an ever-evolving, ever-expanding experience of what already exists. Yes, already exists, because as Einstein discovered and talked about in his 1905 special relativity theory, all time and space are interlinked, and therefore, if you follow it through, there is no present moment. Every moment is as present and eternal as every other moment. Einstein himself said that, there are many fake Einstein quotes on the internet, but he really did say, time and space are not conditions by which we live, they are modes by which we think. We create time and space as a way of making sense, of making order, of finding a path and building a narrative through the universe. But the fact is, everything exists simultaneously, which means as you grow as a consciousness, the larger, bigger parts of you, you know that you are highly motivated toward improving your life. And sooner or later, you will find ways to improve your life. Well, every stage of your life already exists. So yes, the past selves exist, but they continue to exist so you can heal them. If you have trauma in your past, look forward to ways of healing them. And that is where they talk about often healing starts with the inner child work. I do a lot of work understanding. My system is called Inner Selves Mastery because understanding you are comprised of many, many different selves. And so the inner child is where a lot of healing can begin, because the child carries a lot of the imagination, the desires, the ideals that we then try to play out as best we can in our adult life. So when you do a meditation and you go back in a light or deep meditation and you talk with your inner child and you resolve something, you be the parent, you reparent yourself, you be the parent, you be the friend that your child never had, and you come out of that meditation and maybe you feel a little better, you need to understand that's not just a technique. That is not some way of playing around with the neural network connections in your brain. No, you are actually visiting with your consciousness your eternal child self that you remember being, but now you are the adult who can go in a meditation outside of time and space or into the simultaneity of all time and space, and connect with these other selves. So when you truly heal, when you truly deeply heal, it is the entire universe. It is all the selves shifting and changing like a big network, like a big fabric of your being shifting into a better position of healing. So likewise, if the past selves always exist for you to connect with them and heal with them, and you know when you've healed because you come out back from a meditation, you not only feel better, you can think and feel and do things that you couldn't do before. That is real healing. And that's permanent. That's a permanent up-leveling of your energy. So likewise, the future selves exist. Your best future already exists. It's already there, waiting for you to connect with it. And it is frankly always trying to connect with you. Your God self, your goddess self, your creator self, these higher levels of your being already exist. And of course, quantum physics gets very mystical, talking about probability clouds and how there aren't really objects and that things localize into forms depending on how you interact with them. That gives you some idea of combining that with all space-time is simultaneous, that the universe is this vast network of energy possibilities that are really limited only by your imagination. So let's imagine that all possibilities exist, but you don't have to live all of them. What you're looking for is, through the belief system layer, your higher being, which already knows how good life can be, pours itself into some of these beliefs of the Earth system. You want to have a great Earth lifetime, many Earth lifetimes, in fact. If you understand, tap into reincarnation, there's just too much going on in the Earth system for just one lifetime, for just one vantage point perspective on all of it. It's just so wonderful and amazing. You really do have many lifetimes. So what happens is you have a higher state of being that wants to have the most beautiful lifetimes on Earth, but because there is only consciousness to create anything out of, there is no actual physical reality out there. This is a consciousness projecting itself experience, and then we go into the realities, share it with other people that we meet up with because they have similar beliefs, similar energy in the law of attraction, and you go through life lessons, life experiences. So I just wanted to paint a little picture of that, because there is no reason why you can't be both the creator, a spiritual level of awareness that can see the belief system layer and change beliefs to have a better life experience, as the human being who then lives under the beliefs. Human beings are obliged to experience life through their beliefs. But you see, we have these natural periods of action and then reflection. Well, the reflection times are, give yourself space to be able to step back and relate to being a spiritual being who can notice what kind of beliefs I must have had to have had those kind of reactions, those kind of thoughts and experiences. This is the ascension, to become both the creator and the creation together. To be the creation, the human being who has a lot of fun until natural pauses in the sequential time-space experience. You step back, you assess what you've been doing, what you've been choosing, make some new choices, change your beliefs as needed, and then go back into the set. It's going in and out of sort of the movie or the TV program or the channel. So it is a fact that all these belief system possibilities pre-exist. You don't try to change them. You change yourself as the kind of tuner on different belief systems, by which belief systems you're believing, you're holding on to. It's like your definitions, your worldviews, your expectations, your explanations for how things work and why things are the way they are. So the ascension is becoming both the creator and the creation at the same time, in which case you can live on heaven on earth. You can always figure out ways to mitigate the challenges that you face as a human being. Just sort of sample what's going on. You don't have to endlessly be a victim and suffer. And then when you have enough sampled experience, you can step back and change your beliefs, step in and out, in and out. And as you do that, the reason why we split ourselves into these two levels is so that we can have a sense of experimenting on ourselves, caring about ourselves, have the self-love to choose to stay with your experience and figure out what better beliefs to have a better cycle of experience. And with that kind of cycling, spirit and human, human and spirit, you continually expand into larger and larger states of your total being. You become, eventually you understand, you are the entire universe, always expanding, always discovering more. So with that, and you've probably heard me say it in other videos, if you're watching my series, I'm very excited about this series. I'm just pouring out. Spirit is guiding me. Just pour it all out, Carl. Just share what you know, because that is the journey of life. You figure out what works for you and you share it. You let your light shine. So with that, what are heaven and hell? So heaven is this ascension state of being able to be fully consciously aware of how you are designing your own reality. As I said, you already consciously create your reality. In other words, the conscious thoughts you're aware of, the things that people go around thinking like, oh, I'm so mad, I want to kill this person, and oh, I went to this movie and this and that, and oh, so on. But they don't realize how much those actually impact their reality. So becoming aware of how much your conscious choices and beliefs do create your reality, that is becoming a conscious creator. So hell is the suffering experiences of being a victim, of not knowing what's going on and just feeling I'm just the human creation. I'm at the mercy, a pawn of some kind of cosmic game, and all the best I can do is beg the gods, beg the powers that be, try to please them, sacrifice to them, whatever. Work hard for a living. If you're more in a more secular society, still everybody's doing the same thing. It's like they're working hard for a living. They're working hard to deserve. But if you stay at that creation level, you not only continue to suffer, you never really discover your true uniqueness, and that's the greater suffering. So let's talk about, years ago there was this movie, The Matrix, and I know that not everyone has seen it, so just for the point of view, I'll describe a little bit of it. But the Matrix movie came out, the whole series and the whole franchise and everything, which continues to be a milestone, a benchmark for a kind of hellish paranoia that the system is out to get us. The basic setup of the Matrix movie was that human beings think they're living an ordinary life, but if you take if you're met by the rebels and you choose the red or the blue pill, I don't know, one of them wakes you up to seeing that actually life is this horrible post-apocalyptic nightmare, that human beings are all hooked up like batteries, that somehow, for some reason, the machines need humans as batteries. And, it's like, not everything in this has to make sense. It was just basically a metaphor for hell, that really you wake up and you find the world is a nightmare and you are at the mercy of all these mechanisms and machines that are really running the earth into the ground. I remember in 1999 when the Matrix movies came out, it was huge. It was because it was such a violent, hyper violent, hyper action movie with like some really kind of flashy filming techniques. And then it was drawing upon this rather ancient paranoia of that, like, who is pulling our strings, who is running our life, what kind of, hypnosis we're under or whatever. So, going back to so a lot of people discussed when The Matrix came out. There were college courses about it. There were articles. There were magazines. Everybody was jumping on this teachable moment about, going back to Plato's cave. Like maybe our life is really just shadows on a cave and we don't really know what's going on. And classic philosophy is all about admitting we really build our conception of reality from our sense data. We don't really know what reality is. But then my point is that beliefs do precede reality. So you can know what reality is if you just get to the underlying beliefs. Now, beliefs do lead to your thoughts and your emotions and your actions, your behavior, your health status, whatever. And all of that can cascade very quickly. But you can step back and say, what must I have believed to keep reacting that way? I keep reacting so defensively. Did I believe that the world was out to get me? Or can I believe that that the universe is actually my friend and reality is some kind of feedback system for me to monitor and improve my belief systems? And that's what it really is. So the Matrix movie showed that life, you wake up and find out life is a real hell. Well, the reality is there are two levels of awakening. One is the awakening from what you think is day-to-day reality, and you discover that actually there is a realness behind the suffering, and that there's a lot of suffering in the world that comes from the belief systems. You don't necessarily understand where it all comes from, though, but you understand that there's some kind of hell going on. And that's what's being depicted in any of these kind of Matrix-type movies. You wake up from the hypnosis, there was another movie called anyway, just various kinds of paranoid conspiracies that you're being controlled and you got to wake up, folks. Well, that is just waking up out of the day-to-day reality in which you might like to think everything is fine, and understanding that actually there's a suffering, an institutionalized suffering going on. Now, I had already, at the age of 4, seen the real hell. Okay, because the way life works is that the physical plane is, there are 4 levels of human experience. Okay, there's the physical. We're all very familiar with the physical world, and some people try to just stay very nose to the grindstone, close to the physical world. But there is also the emotional plane. Now, in occult traditions, you can talk about the astral plane and various, you can get very, very esoteric about it, but I like to be very pragmatic so that people can relate. So it's physical, emotional plane with your feelings, the mental plane with your thoughts and beliefs, and the spiritual plane with your values and inspirations. So when you get up there, you are that spiritual being who's above your belief systems. You can look down with higher guidance, your greater self, your future self, and make the changes you need to make in your belief system. So I understand that people get very excited when they wake up and to a sense of like, I'm being controlled by something, and I've got to tell more people, and we've got to bust the conspiracy. There is no conspiracy to bust, though. It is just an awareness of the belief systems that are causing all of the suffering. Beliefs don't have to be negative. Negative beliefs are the ones that say things like, everybody's out to get you, life is dog eat dog, just various kinds, there will never be enough, there will always be scarcity, so on and so on. You can also have positive beliefs. And the wonderful thing about positive beliefs is that they let through the true spiritual world. The fact is that life is beautiful, that the universe designs life to be successful, amazing, happy, and prosperous. And you can see and feel that in nature. Sure, there are, various complications of prey and predator in nature, but when you're in a beautiful natural scene, you just feel it. There's like a harmony, there's a beauty, there's a design there that is just transcendent. It's very healing. So when people wake up to the idea that I am being manipulated by something, it's their own beliefs. And if you go further into those paranoid beliefs, like the Matrix movies did, it was very hyper violent. People find out that that life is just this virtual reality prison, and then the rest of the movie series just launches into all kinds of justified killing and mayhem, which is horrific, which is horrible. And then that shows how much people perpetuate the hells from trying to wake up out of the hells, but they don't choose the love. If you just choose the love, you'll be guided to positive beliefs by your higher being, and the positive beliefs circulate, they reinforce themselves, and very quickly you can change your life, and then the world changes around it. So whereas a lot of people were very excited with the Matrix movie and continue to be excited with all kinds of conspiracy theories and waking up to what a hell life is, and they may have some good intentions to make things better, but then they don't realize how much their own violent paranoid thinking is part of the system. They're perpetuating it. When I was 4 years old, I had a benchmark experience that one of the most powerful early memories of my life. Let me tell you about this. It was really amazing. So there I am, 4 years old, summer of 4 years old. So this is back in dating myself, so this is in the 60s. Okay. I was a hippie baby. No, I'm just joking. So the point is, I am sitting in my parents' backyard, small town in rural New York State, lovely white picket fence, the grassy green yard. I heard rumors of I'm going to kindergarten, later that year when I turned 5. So a little bit of a sense of my world might be changing in a big way soon. I'm sitting in the green grass behind the picket fence and beautiful blue sky. And I just sort of, in my child mind, I asked this open question of what is the world like out there? If I'm going to school in the fall, what is the bigger world like? Well, the answer I got was amazing. What happened was this vast cavern opened up. I just was catapulted into this alternate reality experience. I saw this vast cavern open up, of many layers, many ledges of people wailing, crying, suffering, men, women, children, all these people. It was a vision of hell, and yet I was not raised in a fundamentalist family. I was not, exposed to any ideas of hell. I had not been, allowed to see, TV programs with awful images or whatever. Where did this come from? This was the astral plane. You see, I said there's the physical world, but our emotions come from the astral plane, this emotional plane. That is also where people go when they dream at night, and that is also where the afterlife is. So if you think about people's emotions, imagine like when you die physically, you leave your body drops away, but you are still a conscious living being with all these emotions. You now go into the emotional plane, the astral plane. Well, the lower astral plane is where all kinds of people with all the emotional suffering they carry into the afterlife, and they experience hells there. That's what I was seeing, was the lower astral plane. Now the upper astral plane is the various heavens of different religions, like all the ways you can imagine, because there is no solid physical substance to the emotional plane. It's a lot like in dreams. If you do any work with your dreams, I know a lot of people disregard their dreams. It's just too crazy nonsense, and the scientists say it's just some sort of end-of-day garbage collection. Well, it's only that if you treat it that way, but it's a lot more than that. If you're willing to follow your dreams, you will go every night into this world where things are much more fluid physically, but your emotions are the prime motivator driver for your experiences. And you will have all these ways of seeing your psychological issues, of meeting sides of yourself. If you clean up that stuff, you can actually meet beings in the astral plane. You can go to these heavenly cities of various religions as they've been conceived. You can meet your friends in the afterlife. You can meet beings from other levels of consciousness, angels and ETs and nature spirits. It's amazing. It's amazing what can be experienced. Physical human life is really just so small and limited, and yet unlimited if you build it with love. If you follow the conspiracies, then yeah, human life is just a little prison. So what I was seeing as a 4-year-old, this vast cavernous pit of wailing, suffering people, was the lower astral plane. And I remember in my childhood mind just, being kind of stunned and asking, like, what is that? And this wonderful, comforting voice came from behind me and said, that is the world, but don't worry, you have been sent here to help make it a better place. That was an amazing gift for my identity, because you see, when you're a 4-year-old going on 5, you're transitioning from toddler years into childhood years. And the theory of mind, psychologists call it, is very, very important. You see, when you're an infant and a toddler, you're still psychically bonded with your mother. You really aren't clear on your identity. But you need to develop an identity, a sense of your own feelings, your own thoughts, your own sovereign experiences, and then have a sense of like, well, everybody must have their own identity, their own thoughts. And you go into like children rapidly become very complex at the age of 5, provided they haven't had major trauma which blocks their development of this theory of mind and the sovereignty of their identity. Children will have, rapidly have their own toys, their own hobbies, their own friends. They want their privacy. They pull away from mother, and they're more interested in the father figure, this mysterious figure that goes out into the world and earns money by all the stereotypes. Of course, we're just talking some stereotypes here, but the basic underlying energies are there. So this was a gift of the universe to me as a 4-year-old. The universe isn't trying to torment me, torture me by showing me an image of astral hell and the true suffering behind the world. The universe was letting me know I don't have to be in there. I can just be aware that I'm observing it from a perspective of coming to help it, coming to make it a better place. And so I remember looking at all that suffering, and there were no demons, okay? The people weren't even fighting. Everybody was like individually on sitting on ledges, just like bemoaning their personal psychological issues. Everybody was very isolated, very struggling, very, tormented in their own personal ways. And it was down into the depths. And I had a sense of like, it got worse as you went lower. But this was an amazing view of the world. And the universe was letting me know, Carl, you don't have to be in there, but you are here for a reason to see that and do something about it. Now, in retrospect, I kind of wish I had like sort of turned around and said, ooh, big voice, big comforting voice, who are you? But instead, I just, it's poignant, it's sweet. As a 4-year-old, I was just like, I just want to make the boo-boo better. So I remember sort of reaching out with my mind to all these people in the pit and just saying, it's okay, you don't have to be so sad. The big voice says it's going to be okay. And of course, they didn't respond, and then the vision kind of closed up. So I was very influenced by that, naturally. And so that was my awakening into, the conspiracy of the matrix, or the tormenting kind of, who's pulling the puppet strings. So I don't believe in hell. I know that it's individuals suffering at the emotional level in the astral plane, and you can have visions of that. And since then, I have had visions of when people are really struggling with some sort of emotional mental illness. I can see like little devils clawing at them. But those are thought forms from themselves. That it's really about them struggling with their own suffering. So it's interesting that then some years later, as I learned more about my family history and so on, what happens is that I find out there is a lot of suffering in the background of my family. So like psychologically, you could argue that I was psychically tuning into my parents and my extended family. But no, it was the entire world I saw in that hellish place. But the scoop is that my father was a refugee from World War II, that he was a child during the war in Germany, and that he saw cities being bombed by the United States. But so no blame here, just saying like he saw incredible suffering, people dying. And after the war, he moved to the United States as soon as he could. And then he met my mother in rural New York State. And right away they were like soulmates. They got married like in a couple weeks, and it was just amazing. So, but then she had her own history of torment. That my grandfather, her father, she made sure I never met, and he died when I was 2 years old. But he was a monstrous person. He was a very tormented person, torture person, and he passed on that abuse. So the whole family on my mother's side was really struggling with all kinds of abuse. Just stories I'd hear, it's horrible. And yet what was interesting, there were sides of the family that would deny it, say that like, oh no, he was wonderful, and Carl, your mother was just too sensitive. She would we had fun like scaring her and stuff. And it's like, my mother was very jumpy, but she went on, she knew to get herself away from that family, and she married my father, and the two of them built the very best life they could in this rural New York State town. So my point is that my uncle, now so preteen, I don't know what years, maybe 10 or so, I remember him he was a Baptist minister, and he was on the side of like denial of what kind of abuse they had in their family. So my mother, she wouldn't see a therapist because that would be, admitting to how messed up she was, supposedly. I'd say like, Mom, I just, you could do so much healing with some therapy. And it's like, no, that's for mentally ill people. That's for sick people. It's like, that's really sad. That's one whole level of denial. But then some of the other folks in my mother's side, like my uncle, the Baptist minister, they're in a level of denial where they're like, they think the abusers in the family are great and people are just too sensitive. Well, I don't want to say anything bad about these people. Everybody is beautiful and working through their own issues. The thing is, as a Baptist minister, he had these comic books, Chick Comics. There was a whole series, these little pamphlets, tracts, and every single pamphlet was a different depiction of how a certain group was going to go to hell, and very graphic depictions like, the communists, or the people who teach evolution, or the Jews, or the Catholics, or certainly the Buddhists, and just like every single comic was some story about like how somebody from that culture was approached by a Baptist and they said no, and like, I'm not going to give up my beliefs, and they end up going to hell, and you see them being tortured by devils at the end. And I was just like, I can't believe it. It's like that was something that made me realize, like, what I saw as a 4-year-old, many people who don't know how to heal themselves are seeing as hells that are punishment from devils, and you're going to go back there when you die if you haven't lived a good life and pleased God. That's not how it works at all. I mean, God is always trying to help everyone. If you're stuck in your beliefs, you are pushing away the help and healing that you could have, and you lock in with your belief systems these kind of suffering torments. So I remember collecting these comics. I just say like, oh yeah, thanks, Uncle, and just gathering all these. And like the fact that one of them was like the evolutionists, the people who teach evolution are going to hell. Well, my mother was a sweet second grade teacher who was really into science, like to talk about how people evolve from apes. So I knew my mother isn't going to hell. So I collected these comics as some sort of evidence that my uncle had a mental illness. He was one of those people I saw in the suffering pit when I was 4 years old. So that's some comparison to the religious stereotypes and where it all comes from. But another point I wanted to say was that the Matrix movie came out in 1999, and I did have a very strong reaction to it. I mean, at first, it's like the concept of waking up out of a virtual reality and the special effects, very interesting. But I immediately had a reaction of like, no, when you wake up out of the virtual reality, you wake up into higher levels of heaven. You don't just wake up into a hell and then proceed to like, structure and institutionalize the hell by becoming a warrior who like feels justified to kill anybody who's against you. Like that's just, you're perpetuating the hell. So, and I would tell a lot of people, it's like, I knew like theologically minded, philosophically minded people who were like, "Ooh, the Matrix movie, it's so cool." I'm like, what's cool about it? It's the exact inverse, the exact opposite of the truth. The real world is heaven. The real world is not a hell. But I've since come to appreciate it's about these two levels of awakening, that you awaken from reality to start perceiving the astral, lower astral, hellish realms that are their own place. But if you're conspiracy minded, you get stuck there. If you're love oriented, you rise to higher levels with the guidance of the higher levels of yourself and higher beings to realize that there's a heavenly world to wake up into. Well, it's an interesting phenomenon that has to do with the duality of reality, that there's always a choice being offered. That I don't know if you've noticed, often when there are big budget movies of a certain type, there's often a lesser known version of the same theme. So the same year The Matrix came out, 1999, and everybody's saying, oh my God, The Matrix is so breakthrough, so revolutionary. There was another film called The 13th Floor. Now that's my favorite virtual reality film. So The 13th Floor, it was all the virtual reality kind of philosophy of The Matrix, but then it went so much deeper. It had a whole romantic element that this guy finds out that he is in a simulation, even as he was designing a simulation. The computer program he designed, the people within it were becoming conscious, and he interacts with them, and then he's visited by someone from a higher level who says, you are in a simulation and you've become conscious. And then there's a whole storyline about how the main protagonist, it's really interesting that it symbolizes the conquering of personal negativity. The protagonist in the story at the level of our reality, he starts becoming possessed by this horrible negative side of himself. And so a woman from the higher dimension visits. Interesting that in that movie it's said that the future that has this simulation technology is 2024. The year that we're having a lot of ascension activity on the planet, and I'm making this video. So So this woman visits him and says, what's happening is you are the avatar of my husband at the higher level who's losing his mind. He's becoming like psychotic from playing out all his fantasies in the simulation world. And you are actually a consciousness born of him, and I love you. You're the good consciousness of my husband. So at the end, there's a whole sort of action sequence and detectives and all this. But in the end, what happens is the evil consciousness dies off, and the lovable consciousness of this guy is able to then ascend to 2024, the simulation, and wake up next to his wife and be at this higher dimension. So it's a fantastic metaphor for the ascension process. So that film, it didn't get the big praise, and it wasn't like some big new watershed thing. It was actually, the 13th Floor was based on a 1964 sci-fi novel called Simulacrum 3. And that had already been made into a German TV miniseries by the great German director Werner Fassbinder in 1973. He made a miniseries called World on a Wire. So we're talking about like alternate to the pop culture mainstream, like super grand paranoia, hyper-violence, hyper-media attention, is this other alternate storyline going further, much more sensitive, much more leaning to the ultimate heaven that life can be, and that it's got long history of going back for decades, and but nobody's crowing, nobody's going on about that. Well, I love 13th Floor, and I recommended seeing it. So okay, there's hell for you. That's what hell is about. And one more point I wanted to make was just, one really fascinating input for our understanding of the universe are people who have near-death experiences. Those are people who, thanks to medical technology, they actually go into a death state and then are revived. And they come back with amazing stories of going out of their body, going in a tunnel of light, meeting guides in the afterlife, seeing their dead relatives. And the place is so beautiful. It's so heavenly. It's not just beautiful visibly, but it's like the energies, the love is so palpable. And then people who have a near-death experience, they have some experience of being told, no, you have to go back. And they're like, no, don't make me go back to that hellish place. It's like, no, you want to go back. You have. And then they may get explained your children need you, or you have more lessons or whatever. So then people go back, they get medically revived with these amazing stories. They amaze the doctors. It's like they can describe, they saw the doctors doing stuff from above that they could not have seen being unconscious on the operating table, plus it was out of visible sight. And it's like, so the doctors can't understand. How did you see these things? Well, I was flying out of body. It's like, so people are stretched to imagine these and try to believe these things, try to understand them. And that's a big part of my role, is to put it all together. This is very sensible stuff. You don't want to believe crazy, ungrounded things. It's true. The higher spiritual understandings of life actually make total sense. It all fits together. So, and to be fair, I mean, near-death experience stories have existed throughout time and informed many philosophies, many religions in one way or another. It's just that with medical advances today, it's much more common to be brought back from the death state. Well, it is also true that a certain percentage of near-death experiences come back with some kind of hellish experience. Like, oh my God, I saw these devils and they were tormenting me and it was endless. And these are people who were, hammered as kids that, by some fundamentalist, horrific, religious system being told, you're going to go to hell if you aren't perfect. And nobody's perfect and everybody hides secrets. So they go to hell when they die. But then there are a number of these cases. I remember one woman talking about it where it felt like an eternity of suffering in this afterlife state. And she started to adapt to it and get used to it and notice repeating patterns. And she got to some point of saying, enough, this is bullshit, enough. And the devil who was tormenting her took off his mask, and it was a friend of hers who was deceased in the afterlife, and said, like, look, we were just, it's a kind of prank. We were just playing along with your belief systems so that you could get it out of your system. And she was furious. She's like, how can you do this to me? And I have to admit, I would not want that kind of prank played on me in the afterlife, but then I won't need to because I already understand a lot of these things. So yeah, I mean, it's all the lower astral, tormenting places. A great movie. Oh my God, you got to see this movie. It's called Astral City. It was channeled by Brazil's greatest medium. Brazil, they're really into a lot of spiritualism and connecting with the afterlife. So Chico Javier, a real genuine guy. Like he channeled like 500 some books, gave most all of his money to charity, just a really good, sincere guy. His best collaboration was with a doctor in the afterlife, and they made a series of books that became bestsellers. They made a movie that was translated as Astral City. It's called Nosso Lar in Portuguese. You got to see this movie. It's subtitled. It's beautiful. It's like What Dreams May Come. If you recall that movie with Robin Williams, that was Hollywood's version. But quite enlightened. You know, the producer and the writer on that, Stephen Simon, yeah, I'm forgetting some of the names, but you know, it was quite enlightened. But still, Hollywood's version of the afterlife. Well, imagine like a really sensitive foreign film based on a totally true story, totally amazing, mind-blowing, and I know friends of mine don't like that movie because it does start out with a scene of astral hell, of this purgatory place where when this guy dies, because of the ways he had been selfish, he ends up at this lower level. But there are no devils, there are no demons. It's a lot like what I saw as a 4-year-old, that people are working through their own feelings of a lack of self-worth and not believing that there's an afterlife. And what the resolution for him in shown in the movie is that he reaches a point where he just prays. He just breaks down and prays to the God that he hadn't previously believed in. It's like, this is insane. You know, there's got to be something better. And at that point, yes, higher beings can come through and rescue him and take him to the astral heavens, the upper astral realm, where heavenly cities, and he gets, you know, educated on how the universe really works. Beautiful, beautiful movie. You got to see that. Enough said then about the hell part. I wonder how long this video is going to be, but it's really breaking open the story, right? So needs to be said. Okay. So, in my early 40s. Now, I've had a lifetime of spiritual, mystical experiences, a big awakening after college, to start talking to the universe and learning a lot from my own inner teachers, from channelers, channeled entities like, you know, Seth, Bashar, Lazarus, Abraham Hicks. Like, you can learn about. I mean, this stuff is available. This knowledge is available. The problem is, if your belief systems push it away, if you can't believe in it, then, you know, people have to incrementally do their best to change their life until they're ready to start believing these beliefs. You get to levels of knowing. Knowing is above beliefs. You can just know things, and then you choose the positive beliefs that allow through the knowing and the higher love of the universe. Okay, so, and then in my 30s, I had started tapping into my past lives. And actually, it's important to note this. So my past life, though the first big past life that came to me, and I'll just say the name, Hildegard of Bingen. Okay, some people know the name, some people don't. She was this pretty remarkable figure in the Middle Ages, a nun who's just, you know, it was the right time, is the right place for her to do all kinds of like prophesizing, spiritual experiences, like, you know, mystical. She leads a group of people, and she gets credited for a lot of the things that her community did. Her main goal, as is mine, as another lifetime of our shared soul, is that we just love to help people wake up. We help people realize their full potential as joyful, creative, divine human beings. So Hildegard gets remembered for a lot of the things that her community did. So the music, yes, she wrote music, but there were those who helped her. And I've met them in this lifetime. It's so cool when you meet repeating incarnations of your friends from other lives. But, her linguistic accomplishments, her accomplishments in natural medicine and philosophy. And it's like, yeah, she is channeling a lot of this stuff from our soul, but she's also highly influenced and influencing with her community. So it's a school of effect. So yeah, Hildegard is like my closest spiritual partner from my own soul. Remember, all lifetimes are simultaneous, all time is simultaneous. So really, it's not about past lives or future lives. It's other forms of your own being. It's like what I would do in the Middle Ages and what my sisterly self did. So sometimes we merge and overlap, and sometimes we're very distinct talking to each other. Well, in my 40s, early 40s, I had a series of lucid dreams that really showed me, with her help, with Hildegard's help, the nature of what you would call heaven, the above the simulation. So I was starting to have a lot of dreams of classrooms. Now, a lot of folks do have these kind of classroom dreams. And what is often happening is that in the upper astral plane, you are in classrooms learning about the universe. And these classroom dreams, they would become more and more vivid. And sometimes I would get lucid and I would get up and I would give a presentation to the class about what it's like living back on Earth and where my life is at. And they seem to really appreciate that. And always I would have this companion self who reminded me of Hildegard, that she was with me in these classroom dreams and walking around the university. We'd go in these lectures. It's like sometimes it would get really trippy. It was like, I would pattern it after my own memories of going to MIT, but it was not MIT because like this one lecture was on UFO technology, and I woke up like with these formulas in my head, and it's like the coefficient of levitation, and then I tried to write it out, and I was like, that's not translating into the current reality. I can't make any sense of this. I was just sort of awake for a moment in that class anyway. But the point is, lucid dreams are when you become fully cognizant in your dream. And I was having more and more of these lucid dreams of walking around this university with my partner. So then in this one dream in particular, really cool, I become fully lucid. I wake up with my partner, this blonde woman who I relate to as Hildegard. She's sitting next to me on my left, and she looks to me like, "Oh, great, you're all here. You're fully awake. Great. Now just hold on. The professor's finishing." And there's some professor talking about something esoteric in front, and he finishes. And then she turns to me and it's like, "Oh, Carl, we love it when you fully become present here in the real world. This is the real world. Welcome to the real world, Carl." And she proceeded to explain. She took me out into the hallway where we met with a whole bunch of people who knew us. I wasn't sure who they were, but they knew me, they knew her, and they were all really like respectful and like, congratulating me for becoming fully awake. And they were so excited. And she was explaining to me like, "Look, Carl, we are in the university," kind of a pun for the universe. We're in the university learning, taking turns guiding and being guided by each other. So when I'm incarnated, she is in the university learning how to guide me, and vice versa. When she is incarnated, when she was Hildegard, I have had dreams of going back and trying to reach out to her as a spirit. So and just for reference, I'll talk more about the story in another one, but it was pretty funny. Like back then, as Hildegard, she thought I was some kind of angel appearing to her, and I was like, no, I'm your future lifetime, and she couldn't process that with the beliefs of that time. But relative now here, I mean, she's got hundreds of years on me, and so she's saying in this experience of the higher reality, she's saying like, we take turns. Like last semester, I was the one incarnated and you were the one guiding me. But the same kind of thing of like, when I have a good day, which is my nighttime that I'm sleeping. When I'm in a good state, she can lead me around sort of like a puppy dog, and I'll go in and out of being aware of being in this astral university. On other days, she said, we just leave you in the dorm room to sleep it off. And that a lot of these pairs of students, that these lifetime pairs going through similar courses of learning to be a guide to themselves and to others, a lot of people just have to like spend most of the time back in the dorm. And this like totally jibed. I've had a lot of dreams, lucid dreams of waking up in a dorm room and feeling like, where's my partner? Where's my partner? And it's like, oh, she must be at class. I just have to wait for her. So, yeah, it was pretty wonderful, very validating for it to all make sense that we take turns incarnating. And, time is all very flexible. It's all relative. But the idea of sort of one semester, she's incarnated, the next semester, I'm incarnated. And then she said, Carl, before you wake up, would you like to see the device, like how you experience, how we simulate your earth life, where you go when you wake up? I was like, oh yeah, let's check it out. So she led me to this big sort of a gymnasium, and we were at like a catwalk level halfway up, and this catwalk looking down, and in the center of the room is this large black cube, like a large room or like even a small house. And it has a doorway that's open with a light pouring out of it. And she said, that is where you go when you wake up. You go into the simulation chamber, and we shut the door and we turn it on, and then you wake up in your bed back on Earth. And this is what happens every day. And so I was like, just seeing the chamber, I was like, so I felt this draw. I'm like, I think I'm waking up. And she said, okay. And she took me down, and technicians are scurrying around, like, flipping switches and plugging in cables. And I go in, sort of wave by and go in, and the next thing I know, I wake up in my bed back on Earth. That's the simulation, and that's the higher purpose, that we are learning various lessons of how to love each other, how to guide each other, often working with other lifetimes of our soul. A lot of channelers experience this, that the first beings they channel are their own, future selves, or an ET self, some more evolved part of them, their own soul, a lifetime, like a sibling, because the mission, the soul personality, our theme of what we come to Earth to do is very compatible. So yeah, there I had it. It's like, wow, that's the real matrix, that I wake up when I go in this cube. And now to understand, there aren't literally machines. I mean, we are talking at non-physical levels where everything's more obviously built out of our own consciousness. Basically, whenever you design a belief system, imagine something that fits well together, that symbolically, all the relationships are good, and it can hold the energy of the higher realms, that becomes a working reality. So I'm not saying everybody will see the same kind of device I saw, this black cube room that you go into when you wake up. And then it also begs the question of like, well, what are the other times when I was sleeping, I thought I was in a dorm room, but then I'm next to her, and like, there are various ways in which that reality of the simulation cube can dissolve as we're learning to build our own reality, to run our own reality. But see, there are levels of understanding. So yes, in very practical terms, you have something like this, some kind of device that you go into when you wake up in the morning, and your dreaming in heaven is your daytime on Earth. And even if you have a horrible life on Earth, you haven't left heaven. You are just struggling perhaps with your belief systems and how to program yourself, how to understand yourself. So that's the real matrix. And like, let's see what I'll make notes here. I want to wrap up. Yeah, so actually in my first of this series, talking about what it means to be real in a fake world, I mentioned this idea of the real matrix. So after like 10 years later, okay, I had an experience where my spirit partner introduced me in a dream in my childhood home. But I'm pretty lucid, pretty aware, like this is just a good representation of where I'm at energetically. This isn't my childhood home. But we talk a little bit and we hug and like, oh my God, felt so good. And she says, there's someone downstairs for you to meet. And so I went downstairs in my childhood home dream and out the back kitchen door, opened the door, and there's a woman standing there. And I couldn't see her face. It was sort of foggy, misty, but I knew it was a real person and that my partner and my soul wanted me to meet this person. So I asked them identifying questions. I said, like, what's your name? And she told me a name. And I said, like, where are you from? And she said something kind of like a riddle, like I didn't really understand. And I was like, can you tell me other identifying features? And she told me her height and a couple other things. And then really identifying, she showed me this art project that she was working on. It was amazing. And so when I woke up, I knew like that is a real person, and my soul team, my soul family, as I call them, they want me to meet her. So I'm just like on the lookout, and it was easy. In a couple of days, I came across a personal ad, keeping my eyes on some of the dating sites. A personal ad is like, oh my God, that's the person. I couldn't recognize the face. I didn't see the face in the dream, but the name, the height, just the vibe. And so I call her up and I'm like, oh my God, I wonder how far away she lives. She lived like around the corner. She had just moved to my area from not that far away either. And what was cool is I contacted her and I said, yeah, it's like really excited. Like, how soon can we get together? And she was cool. She was like, yeah, as soon as possible. But first I'm going to see The Matrix for the first time tomorrow night. And like, oh my God, like, well, when I meet you, I'm going to tell you about the real Matrix. Just don't believe all the paranoia of that film. And she's a really sweet person. She wouldn't buy into the paranoid conspiracy theory anyway. But yeah, so when we met on our date, I could tell her. So the real Matrix is you don't just wake up out of reality and discover it's a hell. You wake up further and discover it's a heaven. And that I was shown, I was introduced to you in a dream, and that's how I found you, and I knew things about you. And the real cincher is I could describe her art project. And she's like, oh my God, that's it. I just made this art project. Had a spiritual significance to her, had to do with like being seen by the universe, and like, oh my God, I'm seen. So yeah, it was really cool to say that's the real Matrix. So I think that's about all I wanted to say. Now you understand a lot more about what the real hell is. The hell is the belief systems that are negative, that make you think things are against you. You end up with a lot of suffering emotions, and you can get stuck in the lower astral realms. And the real heaven is the level of higher beings, a real paradise world, where higher beings, including ourselves, are just learning to put ourselves into different belief systems to extend the creation. It's all about like, I want to have beautiful lifetimes on Earth. Okay, so what part of Earth history would you like to pick? What kind of spiritual lessons would you like? Okay, I'll jump in here. That means I'm going to have to get born to a family and adopt a lot of negative beliefs, but I'm going to beat them. I'm going to, heal that stuff when I get older. Well, sometimes we bite off more than we can chew, and it's true that as children we have to absorb all these beliefs just to be able to fit in and survive, have people take care of us. We can't some people do as children just say like, you're not my real parents. I'm from heaven, and I remember Jesus, and I remember my guides, or I remember my other lifetimes. And it's like, it can really freak parents out. I mean, a child really risks abandonment if they're too spiritually aware. So a lot of us, we're not that spiritually aware, but we have key experiences to guide us. And the goal is that we all want to, as we become, sovereign adults who are able to run our own minds and rise to these higher levels where we can see our beliefs and change them, we all hope to heal. We all hope to heal and then become specialists in the kinds of journeys we went through, like the kinds of things we had to do to help ourselves, we can now offer to others. That's the wounded healer archetype, or the self-healing healer that I like to call it. So that's the goal, is that we are higher beings. Whatever your situation in life is, you may relate it to the hell of belief systems that have made you struggle, but don't stay convinced that you're a victim. When you're in the human stuff, yeah, you can have victim feelings, but whenever possible, reflect, self-accept, and rise to a higher level and realize, like, oh, I could change some of this. And I'm hearing people with near-death experiences, or I'm hearing Carl talk about his own initiation at the age of 4, of seeing the suffering is this pit of the emotional problems. There are no devils. There's nobody doing it to us. It's our own beliefs that are doing it to us. And of course, the sad thing is when, you get people who are all paranoid and they interlock, and you get these codependent relationships where they act out all their paranoias, and they make it look like the world is really a terrible place with all the impacts and wars and nothing you can do about it. But it's still not true. It's still not true. You can stage anything in the movies, okay, but it's still not true. And it doesn't invalidate the experiences. The experiences are real. The emotions are real. They carry into the afterlife, okay? But the fact that the physical world is a shared virtual reality from the simulation means that you can change it. You can change it much more easily than you ever were taught. You can change it by changing yourself, by connecting more with your higher dimensions, viewing it as a simulation. And a simulation that becomes real with your love. The whole point is, yeah, it's a simulation, but it becomes real with positive beliefs that let through the love, the consciousness of love. Then you can have like amazing vacations from the higher dimensions. You can oh, let's go to Earth. Let's have some fun in our Earth belief systems. Oh yeah, that's what it is. It's a playground for creators. So welcome to the real world. Welcome to my explanation of heaven and hell. You can compare it to your own experiences and just become the divine creator you really are, and have more fun with your life. Believe it. You are a valuable part of the universe, and you are here to learn to master reality creation and just share the love. Thank you. All right, and here's my partner, Hildegard. We don't really have good images of her, but this is from a corner of one of her divine illustrations. The guy she's talking to is the monk Volmar, and you see the flames on the top of her head. She's getting divine communication. All right, and here's my partner, Hildegard, just to say hi. So this is, we don't really have good images of her, but this is from a corner of one of her divine illustrations. The guy she's talking to is the monk Volmar, and you see the flames on the top of her head. She's getting divine communication. She got a lot of visions that she turned into illustrations.